A mixed-breed dog found an abandoned baby in the trash, and with desperate barks attracted the attention of a young woman passing by. The miraculous rescue revealed painful truths and an inexplicable connection between three lost souls. A journey of compassion, where the most unlikely hero proves that love transcends species. Open your heart to this touching story, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments, do you believe in four-legged angels? The dawn in the Hopewell neighborhood shivered under the weight of its own shadows when a bark tore through the silence like a knife-cutting black velvet. It was a different sound from the nightly howls that usually echoed through the narrow alleys of that forgotten corner of the city. This bark carried urgency, a sharp note of desperation that made the cats on the roofs raise their heads and the dogs behind the gates respond with restlessness. The humid March air weighed on the faded tile roofs as a caramel-colored mutt with floppy ears and matted fur sniffed among the overflowing trash cans on St. Joseph Street. His amber eyes reflected not just the dim light of the street lamps but something deeper, a determination that transcended the basic instinct for survival. Anna woke up with her heart pounding that night. 3 months had passed since she received the layoff letter from Central Hospital, and since then, the nights were all the same, a losing battle against thoughts that spun in endless circles about bills to pay, resumes sent without reply, and the emptiness left by Mark, who chose to leave just when she needed support the most. At 32, Anna felt the weight of the world on her narrow shoulders, the kind of weight that turned the simple act of getting out of bed into a daily victory. The barking persisted outside, different, insistent, almost human in its plea. She knew that sound. It came from the mutt that had been circling the block for weeks, always keeping a respectful distance from residents, never accepting food directly from hands, always waiting for them to leave the plate and walk away. Pudding. On the faded coat that had been her mother's birthday gift 5 years ago, Anna stepped out into the damp night. The smell of wet earth mixed with the pungent odor of accumulated trash, creating a typically urban olfactory symphony. The dog, seeing her, stopped barking for a moment, his eyes meeting hers in a silent communication that crossed the space between species. Then, as if certain she would follow, the animal ran a few yards, stopping to look over his lean shoulder, his tangled fur fluttering in the cold wind descending from the hill. The vacant lot near the neighborhood dumpster was a place people avoided after sunset. There, where progress had forgotten to arrive, rubble and debris formed irregular mountains, involuntary monuments to human neglect. The mutt ran directly to a specific pile, his paws frantically scratching at the damp cardboard, the barks now mixed with urgent whimpers. Anna approached cautiously, her heart beating so hard she could hear it in her own ears. It was then that the soft, almost inaudible sigh escaped from inside a cardboard box, half buried among plastic bags. The world seemed to stop at that instant. Even the wind ceased its melancholic song. With trembling hands, Anna pushed the debris aside. Inside the box, wrapped in a thin blanket that looked more like a dish towel, was a newborn. The umbilical cord still present told a story of abandonment so recent that the small body still retained some warmth. The closed eyes, the tiny hands, clenched into minuscule fists, the purplish skin from the cold. Everything screamed urgency. Anna didn't think twice. Taking off her own coat, she wrapped the child and ran, the mutt following her steps like a faithful shadow, barking to wake up the entire neighborhood. At the regional hospital, the on-call team received Anna with that mixture of professionalism and astonishment that marks the extraordinary moments in medicine. The baby, a boy, was immediately taken to the NICU while Anna answered questions from the police and the social worker. The mutt had been stopped at the entrance but remained there, sitting like a statue of canine devotion, ignoring the fine rain that had begun to fall. During the following hours, while the little one struggled to stabilize his body temperature, Anna found herself unable to leave. Something held her there, an invisible connection that went beyond the casualness of the rescue. In the days that followed, an unexpected routine was established. Anna woke up early, made weak coffee to save grounds, and went to the hospital. The mutt waited for her at the building's gate, always in the same spot, as if he had a perfectly synchronized internal clock. Together they walked to the bus stop, him keeping a respectful distance but never losing sight of her. At the hospital, the staff began to know her, some remembering her from her time working at Central Hospital. The head nurse, an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes, allowed Anna to spend hours by the incubator, watching little Gabriel, the name given by the nursery staff, gain strength, day by day. It was on a Thursday afternoon that Anna had her first meaningful conversation with another human being in weeks. David, the hospital's night security guard, approached during one of her vigils. He was a simple man in his 40s with calloused hands from hard work and a smile that lit up his tanned face. He said he had seen the mutt waiting in the parking lot every night, sleeping under the awning when the rain was heavy. He said he had started leaving food scraps for the animal, admiring his loyalty. The conversation flowed naturally, two strangers united by concern for vulnerable beings, and Anna felt for the first time in months that maybe she wasn't completely alone in the world. The annual Hopewell Neighborhood Community Fair arrived with its colorful stalls, live music, and the smell of fried dough pastries permeating the air. Anna, who would normally avoid crowds, felt compelled to participate. She set up a small table with posters telling the story of the rescue, asking for donations for the hospital, and raising awareness about child abandonment. The mutt, now named Guardian by her, stayed by her side, attracting curious people, especially children who cautiously approached to pet his fur, now cleaner after the baths Anna managed to give him in the building's yard. It was during the fair that Mrs. Rodriguez, a 78-year-old woman with the wisdom of her years, approached. With a voice hoarse with emotion, she said she knew Guardian's story. The dog had belonged to the Miller family who lived in the blue house on the corner. When they decided to move to an apartment downtown, they simply left the animal behind as if he were just another old piece of furniture. Guardian waited at the door of the empty house for weeks until he understood he had been abandoned. Since then, he had wandered the neighborhood, refusing to trust humans again, until that fateful night he found the baby. Mrs. Rodriguez's revelation planted a seed of indignation in Anna's chest, but also even greater admiration for Guardian. A being who had known abandonment chose to save another from the same fate. It was as if the universe had conspired to unite three wounded souls in a dance of mutual redemption. David appeared at the fair after his shift, bringing an extra-packed meal which he shared with Anna as they talked about life, dreams left behind, and the stubborn hope that insists on sprouting even from the hardest concrete of disillusionment. Winter came to the Hopewell neighborhood. With the sharp claws of the south wind and endless rain, Anna received the call she both expected and feared. Baby Gabriel was recovered enough to leave the hospital. The social worker explained that he would be placed in a temporary shelter while awaiting an adoptive family. Anna's heart tightened, as if invisible hands were squeezing it. That night she cried as she hadn't cried since her divorce. Hot tears of helplessness and the desire to be able to offer more than her situation allowed. It was David who, during one of their casual encounters at the hospital, suggested Anna inquire about the foster care program. He said he knew a social worker who could guide her through the process. Hope ignited timidly in Anna's chest, like a candle fighting against the wind. The following weeks were a bureaucratic marathon, endless forms, home visits where every corner of her small apartment was scrutinized, psychological evaluations that reopened barely healed wounds. Her one-bedroom apartment would need a crib, a high chair, and 1,000 other things her tight budget couldn't afford. The first major turning point came when the hospital director, knowing the story and impressed by Anna's dedication, offered her a temporary contract in the nursery. It wasn't much. The salary barely covered basic expenses, but it would allow her to stay close to Gabriel while fighting for temporary custody. David celebrated the news with a wide smile and a spontaneous hug that left Anna blushing and confused by the sudden acceleration of her heart. Guardian, who now regularly slept on Anna's small balcony, seemed to sense the change in energy, barking happily for the first time since she had met him. The joy was short-lived. The building manager, a middle-aged woman with the temperament of a desert cactus, personally delivered a notice. Animals were not allowed in the complex, and Guardian would have to be removed immediately under penalty of a daily fine and possible eviction proceedings. Anna read and reread the official paper, despair growing with each word. How could she explain that Guardian wasn't just a dog, but a fundamental part of a rescue story that was still being written? David found Anna crying on the bench at the bus stop, Guardian lying at her feet as if he could absorb her sadness. Without a word, he sat beside her, offering a shoulder she accepted without thinking. When the tears dried, he suggested they seek legal help. Maybe there was a loophole in the law, some way to classify Guardian as an emotional support animal. The idea was fragile, but it was all they had. Together they began to research, collect documents, and build a case that would convince not just the manager, but the condo association board. The local newspaper published the story after a reporter covered an adoption fair where Anna had set up a booth to raise funds. The front page photo showed Guardian watching over the makeshift crib where a doll represented Gabriel. The emotional text told the saga of the rescue, the fight for custody, the threat of eviction. The repercussions were immediate and intense. Donations began to arrive. Baby clothes, used but good condition furniture, offers of legal help. But not everything was smooth sailing. The Miller family saw the photo in the newspaper and recognized the dog. Moved by a mixture of unresolved guilt and wounded pride, they showed up demanding Guardian's return, claiming he had run away, not been abandoned. The lie was obvious to anyone who knew the story, but they had old ownership documents and connections at City Hall. Anna found herself fighting on two fronts, the battle for Gabriel's custody and now the dispute over Guardian's presence. Mrs. Rodriguez and other old neighbors knew the truth about the abandonment, but feared testifying formally. The Miller family had a reputation for being vindictive, and no one wanted trouble. It took all of David and Anna's persuasion to get some written statements, even if informal. The atmosphere in the neighborhood became tense, divided between those who supported Anna and those who preferred not to get involved. Guardian seemed to sense the tension, becoming more protective, growling softly whenever strangers got too close. The hearing to determine Gabriel's temporary custody was scheduled for a rainy Tuesday in August. Anna had barely slept the night before, alternating between rehearsing answers to possible questions and checking the documents for the 10th time. David had requested time off work to accompany her, a gesture that warmed her heart more than she was willing to admit. Guardian was left in Mrs. Rodriguez's care, who promised to watch over him as if he were her own grandchild. On the same day, Anna received a summons to appear at Animal Control. The Miller family had formalized a complaint for wrongful appropriation. The timing couldn't have been worse. As if the universe were testing her resilience to the limit, she would have to face two legal battles on the same day. David held her hand during the entire bus ride to the courthouse, a simple gesture that said more than 1,000 words of encouragement. The judge overseeing Gabriel's case was a woman with a penetrating gaze who seemed capable of reading souls. She listened carefully as Anna presented her situation, the stability of her new job, the improvements made to the apartment, the community's support. When it was the social worker's turn to speak, the report was favorable but with reservations. The situation with Guardian was seen as a factor of instability. How could Anna care for a baby if she was involved in legal disputes over a dog? It was then that fate decided to show its hand. An assistant rushed into the courtroom, cell phone in hand. A severe storm had hit the Hopewell neighborhood. The creek had overflowed, and there were reports of people trapped. The judge suspended the hearing, and Anna ran out, David right behind her. On the way, they tried to call Mrs. Rodriguez, but the lines were congested. The bus had to stop halfway, the low streets already impassable. They ran the rest of the way, the water rising. Quickly, they arrived in the neighborhood to find chaos. Guardian was in the middle of the street, barking frantically, trying to draw attention to the building next to Anna's. Without hesitation, Anna followed the dog, the water already knee-high. In the ground-floor apartment, Mrs. Peterson, an 82-year-old woman, was trapped, the water rising dangerously. With the help of David and other residents Guardian had managed to alert, they began a desperate rescue. The dog guided them, showing the safest path through the debris the current brought. It wasn't just Mrs. Peterson. Guardian led rescuers to 5 other residents at risk, including a family with 2 small children trapped in the basement of a house. The animals seemed to have a sixth sense for locating people in danger, navigating the flood with a determination that defied his humble origins. Anna coordinated the rescues, using her nursing knowledge to provide first aid. David organized the teams, his physical strength making a difference in critical moments. A news crew covering the flood captured everything. Images of Anna and Guardian working in perfect sync, saving lives in the tragedy, spread across local news and quickly went viral on social media. The contrast was powerful. The same pair who saved a baby from the trash now saved an entire community from the fury of the waters. The abandoned mutt had become a hero, the 4-legged angel of the Hopewell neighborhood. The next day, with the neighborhood still recovering from the damage, Anna received 2 pieces of news. The Miller family had withdrawn the complaint, embarrassed by public pressure, and perhaps belatedly touched by a flicker of conscience. The second piece of news came through a call from the judge's assistant. The hearing would be rescheduled, but the preliminary report had been updated to include the events of the previous day. Anna's dedication to saving lives, even amidst her own legal problems, spoke more about her character than any document could express. An online petition created by someone in the neighborhood to allow Guardian to stay in the condo reached 10,000 signatures in 48 hours. Local business owners, moved by the story, offered to sponsor Guardian's training as an emotional support dog, which would legally guarantee his right to remain with Anna. The manager, surrounded on all sides and perhaps touched herself by the images of the rescues, reluctantly conceded, agreeing to call a special assembly. David appeared at Anna's apartment 3 days after the flood, bringing a disassembled crib he had gotten from a colleague. As they assembled the furniture together, the silence between them was comfortable, charged with unspoken promises. Guardian supervised the work, lying in a corner, occasionally lifting his head to check if everything was okay. When David hurt his finger with the hammer, Anna cared for the wound with professional tenderness and something more. The kiss that followed was soft, hesitant, as if they both feared breaking the magic of the moment. The condo association assembly was unanimous. After hearing the full account of the rescues and seeing with their own eyes the difference Guardian had made, no one had the courage to vote against his presence. More than that, several residents offered to help with the costs of his training and certification. The abandoned mutt was no longer an intruder, but a valued member of the community, a guardian in the truest sense of the word. The new hearing for Gabriel's custody went smoothly. The judge, clearly impressed by the recent developments and the massive community support, granted temporary custody for 1 year, with a strong indication that Anna would be prioritized for final adoption. When they left the courthouse, the February sun bathed the city in golden light. Gabriel, in Anna's arms, was babbling his first attempts at speaking. "Mama," came out clear as crystal, making Anna cry tears of pure joy. Guardian barked once, as if punctuating the moment, and David wrapped everyone in a hug that seemed to contain the entire universe. The celebration party took over the Hopewell neighborhood. The community hall was too small to hold everyone who wanted to celebrate. Anna insisted on making the cake herself, Gabriel's first official birthday cake, now legally her son. The date chosen was that of the rescue, a rebirth for everyone involved. Guardian got a special bone and seemed to smile in his canine way as children lined up to pet him. During the party, Mrs. Rodriguez asked to speak. With a voice choked with emotion, she said that in her almost 80 years, she had never seen such clear proof that God uses unexpected instruments for his miracles. An abandoned dog saving an abandoned baby, and in the process, saving a woman from self-abandonment and transforming an entire neighborhood. It was divine poetry in motion, proof that no life is disposable, that all pain can be transformed into purpose. David seized the moment of general emotion. He wasn't a man of grand gestures, but he understood that some things have their moment. The marriage proposal was simple, like him. A modest ring, but chosen with care. the promise to build a life together where love would multiply what money couldn't buy. Anna said yes before he even finished the sentence. Gabriel clapped his hands as if he understood, and Guardian gave 3 barks that everyone interpreted as celestial approval. The wedding preparations were communal, like everything in Anna's new life. The dress was a gift from a neighborhood seamstress touched by the story. The decoration was made with flowers from neighbors' gardens. The catering was prepared by volunteer hands, each dish carrying the flavor of affection. The small neighborhood church barely held the guests. Gabriel walked down the aisle carrying the rings on a small cushion, Guardian by his side with a bow tie that made him look ridiculously dignified. During the vows, Anna spoke about how love sometimes comes disguised in 4 paws and urgent barks. David promised to be the kind of man who deserved to be part of that improbable but perfect family. The emotional priest said that, in his 40 years of priesthood, he had never seen a clearer example of divine providence. When he pronounced them husband and wife, Guardian howled softly, as if singing his own blessing. The honeymoon was simple, a weekend at a mountain lodge. Gabriel stayed with Mrs. Rodriguez and a rotation of neighbors. Guardian, after much debate, went along, unable to be separated from his family for more than a few hours. The lodge owner, initially reluctant to accept animals, changed her mind after hearing the story. For 2 days, Anna and David walked trails hand in hand, Guardian exploring ahead, but always returning as if checking they were okay. 6 months later, the small apartment could no longer accommodate the growing family. With combined savings and a small loan, they managed to get a modest house with a yard in the same Hopewell neighborhood. The move was another community event, neighbors showing up with wheelbarrows and goodwill. Guardian supervised everything, especially concerned about the box containing Gabriel's toys. The yard became his kingdom, where he could run and still keep everyone under watch. Anna was promoted to head nurse of the nursery. The hospital, recognizing her work not only professionally but also in the community, created a special foster care program for abandoned babies. Gabriel, now with his vocabulary expanding daily, called Guardian Woof Hero, a mispronunciation of hero that made everyone laugh. The dog accepted the title with dignity, occasionally bringing his toys to Gabriel in a touching display of interspecies love. Gabriel's 2nd birthday was celebrated in the square that had replaced the vacant lot. A discreet plaque marked the spot as Hope Square, in honor not of the neighborhood but of the feeling that had transformed tragedy into triumph. Children played on the colorful playground equipment, mothers chatted on benches in the shade, and dogs walked with their owners, in a harmony that seemed impossible years before. Anna watched everything with an overflowing heart, as David hugged her from behind, his hands resting on her belly that was beginning to show signs of a new life growing. The news of the pregnancy had come as a sweet surprise. Gabriel would have a brother or sister to protect, Guardian another small human to add to his pack. The dog seemed to already know, approaching Anna's belly with extra care, gently sniffing as if he could feel the life pulsing within. David joked that they would have to get an assistant nanny for Guardian, who took his job as family protector very seriously. Anna's delivery was accompanied by a small crowd outside the hospital. When the healthy baby girl was born crying strongly, David had to go out 3 times to update the anxious group. Gabriel met his sister with solemn curiosity, declaring her tiny baby, which immediately became Maria Claire's nickname. Guardian was brought in to meet the new family member, sniffed gently, and assumed a guard position as he had years earlier with Gabriel. Life followed its course of small daily miracles. Anna divided her time between work, volunteering at the nonprofit, and caring for the children. David was promoted to hospital security supervisor, allowing him to better synchronize his hours with his wife's. Guardian, now with gray hairs appearing on his muzzle, maintained his tireless vigilance, adapting his rounds to include Maria Claire's crib in his domestic patrol route. It was on a random Sunday afternoon that Anna found Gabriel in the yard, talking seriously with Guardian. The boy, now 4, was explaining to the dog that he was the best hero in the world because he saved people without needing a cape. Guardian listened with that infinite patience he reserved for children, his tail gently wagging. Anna felt tears stream freely as she realized her son was growing up, understanding that heroism comes in all forms, and that true love doesn't need a pedigree to be noble. The 5th anniversary of the rescue was marked by a special inauguration. The Guardian Community Center opened its doors, funded by business owners touched by the story, and managed by the non-profit that had grown from the initial movement. The space would offer support for foster families, training for assistants, dogs, and most importantly, hope for abandoned children and animals. Anna cut the inaugural ribbon with Gabriel and Maria Claire by her side, David holding her hand, and Guardian sitting proudly wearing his Medal of Honor awarded by the city. Anna's speech was brief but powerful. She spoke about how a bark in the early morning had changed not only her life but an entire community, how the abandonment suffered by a mutt had transformed into salvation for many, how Guardian had proven daily that heroism doesn't need recognition, that the purest love often comes from the most unexpected places. She concluded by saying that while Guardian would no longer be physically present, his legacy of love and protection would live on in every life he had touched, in every animal rescued by the center, in every child welcomed with love. Guardian now received regular vet visits. Age took its toll in stiffer joints, heavier sleep, but his spirit remained alert. Gabriel had developed the habit of reading adventure stories to the dog, which Guardian listened to with apparent interest. Maria Claire, now older, had learned to walk by holding onto the dog's fur, Guardian patiently adjusting his pace to hers. The family had grown in ways Anna had never imagined that distant night when she followed an urgent bark. Autumn brought news that filled the house with joy. The Guardian Community Center had achieved its first major legal victory. A network of baby abandonment had been dismantled thanks to reports organized by the non-profit, and 10 children were rescued from deplorable conditions. Each rescue brought back memories of that first night, but now there was structure, hope, and especially proof that one person, one dog, one act of courage could create waves of change that spread far beyond the initial point of impact. David surprised Anna on her birthday with a photo album. Each page told a part of the story, from newspaper clippings about the first rescue to recent photos of the family together. In the center of almost every image was Guardian, the golden thread connecting all the moments. Anna cried seeing the visual record of how emptiness had transformed into abundance, how solitude had become community, how abandonment had transmuted into belonging. One morning, Gabriel woke up screaming that Guardian wasn't moving. The panic that followed was controlled by Anna's experience as a nurse, but the vet's diagnosis was clear. The old body of the canine warrior was beginning to fail. Medications could provide comfort, but time had become precious. The family reorganized. Gabriel insisted on sleeping beside Guardian. Maria Claire brought her favorite toys to share. David came home earlier from work. Anna stayed up nights with the care of someone tending a hero in his final days. Guardian had one last spring. Lying in the yard under the gentle sun, he watched the children play with the serene satisfaction of a mission accomplished. Neighbors came to visit him, bringing special treats and stories of how he had touched their lives. The mail carrier who had learned to respect him, the gas delivery man who always brought cookies, the neighborhood kids who had grown up under his watchful protection. Each visit was an unspoken farewell, everyone sensing the end was near, but no one wanting to verbalize it. It was on a full moon night that Guardian passed away. He died as he had lived, surrounded by his family, protecting them until the end. Anna found him in the morning, lying in his usual guard position between the children's bedrooms. The pain was deep, but tempered by infinite gratitude. Gabriel cried with the abandonment of a child losing his first true friend. Maria Claire, not fully understanding, looked for Wolf Hero throughout the house. David hugged everyone, trying to be strong while his own tears fell silently. Guardian's funeral was a community event. The small pet cemetery on the edge of Idu, the neighborhood received an impressive procession. Children he had protected, adults he had inspired, entire families who had witnessed his acts of heroism. Gabriel insisted on speaking, telling with a voice choked but clear how Guardian had saved his life even before he was born. How the dog had taught him that true love is one that protects, that cares, that remains even when it's difficult. How he would forever be the family's four-legged angel. Anna, when it was her turn to speak, chose her words carefully. She spoke about that fateful early morning when a bark had changed the course of multiple lives, how an abandoned being chose to transform his pain into salvation for others, how Guardian had proven daily that heroism doesn't need recognition, that the purest love often comes from the most unexpected places. She finished by saying that while Guardian would no longer be physically present, his legacy of love and protection would live on in every life he had touched, in every animal rescued by the center, in every child welcomed with love. The headstone was simple but powerful. Guardian, protector of lives, savior of souls, proof that angels exist and sometimes have four paws. Fresh flowers appeared regularly, left by anonymous grateful hands. Gabriel developed the habit of visiting weekly, telling his friend about school, about how he protected Maria Claire, how he tried to be brave like Guardian had taught him. In those moments, Anna watched from afar, seeing her son grow with values that no school could teach better than life with Guardian had taught. A year after Guardian's passing, Anna was at the community center when an urgent call came in. A pregnant dog had been abandoned on a plot near the original site of Gabriel's rescue. Without hesitation, Anna went with the team. They found the dog scared but docile, instinctively protecting her swollen belly. During the transport to the partner veterinary clinic, something in the animal's eyes reminded Anna of Guardian, the same mixture of fear and hope, of distrust and the need to believe. The puppies were born healthy, 5 small lives starting, with a better chance than their origins suggested. Gabriel and Maria Claire followed the entire process, fascinated. It was Gabriel who noticed first. One of the puppies, smaller than the others, struggled more than his siblings to nurse, showing a determination disproportionate to his size. With Anna and David's permission, Gabriel chose that puppy to be part of the family, naming him Hope in honor of the neighborhood that had welcomed them, and the feeling Guardian had taught them never to abandon. Hope's training began early, supervised by Gabriel, who applied everything he had learned observing. Guardian! The puppy showed a natural aptitude for caring, surprising professional trainers with his intuition. Maria Claire, now older, participated, teaching basic commands with the patience of someone who had the best teacher. The house once again had the sound of little paws running, alert barks, and that feeling of protection that only the presence of a dedicated dog can bring. The cycle of life continued, but now strengthened by a structure that hadn't existed before. The Guardian Center had become a national reference in sheltering and protection. Families from all over the country came to learn the model developed in the Hopewell neighborhood. Universities sent social work, veterinary, and psychology students for internships. Documentaries were filmed, theses written, but at the heart of it all remained the simple truth that an act of compassion can change the world if we allow its effect to spread. Anna, now director of the center, kept her feet on the ground and her heart open. Every child rescued, every animal sheltered, carried a little of Guardian's story. David coordinated the security of the entire operation, ensuring the space remained safe for the most vulnerable. Gabriel, at 10 years old, already showed a calling for veterinary medicine, spending afternoons helping with the animal care. Maria Claire, with her natural communication skills, organized fundraising campaigns that mobilized the entire city. On a special spring afternoon, the mayor came to the neighborhood for an official ceremony. The street where it all began would be renamed Guardian Way, in honor of the unlikely hero who had transformed a community. Anna held David's hand tightly while Gabriel and Maria Claire held Hope, who watched solemnly as if understanding the importance of the moment. When the plaque was revealed, there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. The name of an abandoned mutt would now forever mark the city map, concrete proof that every being has value, every life matters. The mayor's speech was formal, but Mrs. Rodriguez's words, now 90 years old and still sharp, touched hearts. She recalled how the neighborhood used to be, divided, distrustful, everyone only looking out for their own problems. How a dog had taught a lesson humans had forgotten, that we are all part of the same pack, that protecting the vulnerable makes us stronger, not weaker. She concluded by saying that Guardian might have physically departed, but his spirit lived. On in every act of kindness, in every hand extended, in every life saved. Night fell gently over the Hopewell neighborhood. Anna was on the porch of the house watching the lights come on in neighboring windows. Gabriel was studying at the kitchen table, Hope curled up at his feet. Maria Claire was helping David prepare dinner, talking animatedly about her school project on local heroes, where Guardian was obviously the protagonist. The peace that enveloped her was deep, born not from the absence of problems, but from the certainty that together they could face any challenge. Suddenly, Hope perked up her ears and ran to the gate, barking. It wasn't an alarm bark, but one of recognition. Anna approached and saw a young woman standing on the sidewalk holding a box. The déjà vu was immediate, but this time there was no desperation, just someone who had heard about the center and came seeking help for abandoned puppies she had found. Anna smiled, opening the gate, the story repeating itself, but now with a support network, with structure, with institutionalized hope. As she settled the puppies and calmed the young woman, Anna thought about how life weaves its webs of connection. A bark in the early morning years ago had created waves that were still propagating, touching lives she would never personally know. Guardian had proven that heroes don't need capes, that saviors sometimes come with 4 paws, and that true love transcends barriers between species. Every puppy rescued, every child welcomed, every family rebuilt carried a fragment of the generous soul of the mutt who refused to let a baby die in the cold. That night, before going to sleep, Anna did what she always did. She checked on the children in their rooms. Gabriel was sleeping with a book on dog care open on his chest, Hope curled up at his feet. Maria Claire was hugging the teddy bear that had been Gabriel's, surrounded by drawings of dogs she had made at school. David was snoring softly in their bedroom, his hand reaching out for her side of the bed even in sleep. Everything was well. Everything was protected. Guardian's legacy alive in every peaceful breath. Anna went to the window and looked at the stars. Somewhere up there, she imagined Guardian running free, without joint pain, without the limitations of age, but still watchful, still caring for all of them from a different plane. She whispered a thank you to the universe for putting that improbable angel in her path, for allowing an abandonment to turn into salvation, a tragedy into a story of overcoming. The tears that fell were of pure gratitude, of recognition that sometimes the most powerful miracles come disguised as ordinary events, that love is the most transformative force in the universe, and that yes, angels exist, and some of them have 4 paws and a bark that can change destinies. And you, when will you let hope blossom in your desert? In which dark early morning will you follow the urgent call that can transform not only your life but that of an entire community? When will you allow love in its purest and most improbable form to enter your story and completely rewrite your destiny?